right, guys, we are going to get into key features of functions today. So we are in number 18. And so we're going to talk about some key vocabulary words as well. And it is going to look like this. Domain and range, we've already talked about. So let's go ahead and fill this in really quick. So domain is all my X values, and we write that as far left as we can possibly go and as far right as we can possibly go. Our range is how low did you go? Did you go down low? As high up as we go. So we say from down to up. And remember, if you have negative infinity or positive infinity, you will use parentheses. And if you actually have a point on your graph, you denote that by using brackets. The next key features are what we call intercepts. So x-intercepts are points on the graph where it crosses or touches the x-axis. Now remember, your x-axis line is your horizontal line, just to keep that in mind. So therefore, a y-intercept is one point where the graph crosses or touches the y-axis. So remember, your y-axis line is from up or down. All right, the next key features are called minimums or maximums. So a minimum or maximum, and min for short or max for short. And a minimum is the lowest possible point on your graph, hence why we call it a minimum. And maximum is the highest point on your graph, hence why we call it the maximum. The next key feature is where a function increases, and this is for how long the graph rises or how long it goes up for. So reverse that. Let's decrease in the graph. And to decrease is for how long the graph falls or goes downwards. Now, the last really important key feature is what we call end behavior. Hang on one second. End behavior. And so this is written a little funky, but this x arrow negative infinity means to the far left of my graph, what is my function of f doing? What is it behaving like? And so you'll fill in this piece. What is your function behaving like? Now reverse that. If this is end behavior, I'm not only doing the left side, I'm also doing the far extreme right side of my graph. So as x goes to positive infinity, or the right side of my graph, what is the function behaving like? So that is all of our new function key feature vocabulary. So now let's actually put it to practice. So we're going to do example 1 together, domain and range. And as you look here, we have an upside down V, and this V will continue onwards. Even though you don't see those arrows, it is safe to assume because that V is continuing forever and ever. All right, so domain. How far to the left to how far to the right do I go? So according to what we see, our arrows mean that we continue to the left infinitely. So negative infinity is going to start our domain. And for the far right, we are continuing out to the right infinitely as well. So since I'm going to the right, it's positive infinity. All right, now the range, bottoms up. So how low did I go? Did I go down low? So the lowest we went on our graph is continuing to be low, so negative infinity. And we're coming up to a point. The highest point I can be without going over is up here at the top. And that maximum occurs there up at 12, which means we bracket the 12. That is the highest point on the graph. Can't go past it. All right, now let's do x-intercepts and y-intercepts. So on our x-axis, which is our horizontal line, where do we touch that x-axis? So this line right here, the V, touches our x-axis not once, but it touches twice. And we're going to write those as we went over -6, 0 is our first intercept, x-intercept, and we went over 2, up nothing or down nothing. So 2, 0 is our second intercept on our x-axis. Now when we look at our y-intercept, we go to the y-axis, and where does my V hit or cross or touch? Well, it touches right here, and it crosses through. So let's write that coordinate. We didn't go left or right any, but we did go literally up 6 is where I touched the y-axis. All right, we've briefly discussed this guy already. We have a maximum, and that maximum occurs at the highest point, which is over -2 and up 12. So our point is -2, 12. Now increase and decrease. So where am I rising up the graph? Well, it looks like I'm going up the graph from here to here, which means we're coming from the left direction. And from that left direction, we are increasing this entire time until we stop at the maximum. So we're going to bracket that. So we increase from -infinite direction from the left, and then we stop at this maximum. So at -2, we stop increasing. And from there, we end up falling down our graph, which means that from -2 onwards, we are decreasing. So from -2 out to the right infinitely, we are decreasing on our graph. We are falling down the graph. All right, now let's look at our ends. So our ends here, as we went far left, our ends are going down towards -infinity. So -infinite is our end behavior on the far left side. On the far right side of our graph, we are also falling down infinitely, so -infinity. So time to try an example 2. How far to the left did we go? Well, according to this graph, the farthest left I went is over here at +5. And I continue this arch all the way, and it continues out to the right forever. So out to the right infinitely. Now my range is how low did I go? So how low on this graph is this point? It's as low as -4. It is a point, so we bracket, and it continues upwards forever and ever and ever, infinitely. Now, I do have an x-intercept, but it's only 1. I cross that x-axis here at 21. So over 21 and up nothing. Okay, my y-intercept, however, I'm all the way past my y-axis. So I'm never going to touch my y-axis, which means there is no y-intercept here. We also have a low point on our graph, which means that we have a minimum. And that minimum here occurs at 5, -4. So it's a point on the graph. That is our lowest point. And now let's talk increase or decrease. So increase, as I'm rising up my graph, well, I start my increase here, and I continue my increasing for the entire graph. So I am increasing all the way through this graph, starting at this minimum point at +5, and I continue increasing infinitely to the right, which means that I do not decrease. So none at all. Now let's look at our ends of our graph. So to the far left, my end is my minimum. So how low is that minimum? Well, this function to the far left is going towards -4, aka the minimum's y value. So how low on the graph did I go? Now, as for the right side, my right side of my graph continues outwards infinitely. So towards positive infinity. All right, guys, it's time to practice.